the painful real story of what happened to a 12-year-old girl. The small town of Oak Haven, nestled in the rolling hills of central Pennsylvania, was a place of quiet routines and close-knit community. For Lisa Miller, it was home, the place where she had built a life with her husband David and their two daughters, Emily and Sarah. David's sudden death from a stroke 5 years ago had shattered their idyllic world, leaving Lisa reeling with grief and struggling to cope with the responsibilities of single motherhood. David had been a carpenter, a skilled craftsman with a warm smile and a gentle heart. He had been the anchor of their family, the provider, the protector. His absence left a void that seemed impossible to fill. Lisa, who had been a stay-at-home mother, found herself thrust into the workforce, taking on a part-time job at the local library to make ends meet. She worked tirelessly, juggling her job, her household chores, and the emotional needs of her daughters. Emily, the elder daughter at 12, was a bright and sensitive child with a love for books and a quiet, introspective nature. Sarah, 3 years younger, was more outgoing and boisterous, her energy a constant reminder of the life that still flowed through their home. Lisa did her best to be both mother and father to her girls, to provide them with love, stability, and a sense of normalcy. But the grief was a constant undercurrent, a shadow that darkened even the brightest days. She missed David terribly, his companionship, his support, and the shared responsibility of raising their children. She also felt the pressure from her family, well-meaning but insistent, to find a new partner, to provide a father figure for her daughters. Her mother, in particular, was vocal about the need for Lisa to remarry, to find someone to share the burden and provide for her family. Lisa resisted at first, her heart still heavy with grief. She couldn't imagine replacing David, couldn't fathom the idea of sharing her life with another man. But the loneliness was a constant ache, and the financial strain was a relentless pressure. She worried about her daughter's future, about their well-being, about her ability to provide for them on her own. Then, she met Mark. He was a widower, a few years older than Lisa, with a son of his own, a teenager named Kevin. Mark was a salesman, charming and attentive, and he seemed genuinely interested in Lisa and her daughters. He courted her patiently, respectfully, winning her over with his kindness and his apparent understanding of her situation. He promised to be a good husband, a good father figure, and a stable provider. Lisa, weary of struggling alone and yearning for companionship and security, eventually agreed to marry him. She convinced herself that it was the right decision, not just for her, but for her daughters. She hoped that Mark would bring stability and happiness back into their lives, that he would fill the void left by David's death. The wedding was a small, simple affair, attended by close family and friends. Emily and Sarah, dressed in matching dresses, served as flower girls. Lisa, wearing a simple white dress, tried to smile, to embrace this new beginning, but a flicker of doubt, a nagging unease, lingered in the back of her mind. She hoped, with all her heart, that she was making the right choice. The first few months of the marriage were relatively smooth. Mark was attentive to Lisa, helpful around the house, and seemingly kind to Emily and Sarah. He made an effort to bond with the girls, taking them on outings, buying them gifts, and playing games with them. Lisa, relieved and grateful, began to relax, to believe that she had made the right decision. She saw Mark as a good man, a stable provider, and a potential father figure for her daughters. She started to hope again, to envision a future filled with happiness and security. But gradually, subtly, things began to change. Mark's initial attentiveness waned, replaced by a growing detachment. He became more focused on his work, spending longer hours away from home, and less interested in spending time with Lisa and the girls. He also began to show a clear preference for his son Kevin. He would lavish Kevin with expensive gifts, take him on special trips, and praise his accomplishments, while largely ignoring Emily and Sarah. The girls, initially excited about having a stepbrother, became increasingly withdrawn and resentful. They felt neglected, overlooked, and overshadowed by Kevin's presence. Lisa noticed the change in Mark's behavior, the favoritism, the growing distance between him and her daughters. She tried to talk to him about it, expressing her concerns, but he dismissed her worries, accusing her of being overly sensitive and imagining things. "They're just girls, Lisa," he would say. They're jealous of Kevin. They'll get over it. Lisa, however, couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. She saw the hurt in her daughter's eyes, the sadness that clouded their once bright smiles. She felt a growing unease, a sense of foreboding that she couldn't ignore. She started to observe Mark more closely, paying attention to his interactions with the girls. She noticed the way he would avoid eye contact with Emily, the way he would brush off Sarah's attempts to get his attention, the way he would constantly compare them unfavorably to Kevin. She also noticed a change in Emily's behavior. Her once outgoing and cheerful daughter had become withdrawn and quiet. She spent more time alone in her room, her grades began to slip, and she seemed to lose interest in the things she had once enjoyed. Lisa tried to talk to Emily, to understand what was happening, but Emily remained evasive, deflecting her questions and insisting that everything was fine. Lisa's intuition told her otherwise. She felt a growing sense of dread, a nagging suspicion that something was terribly wrong. She couldn't put her finger on it, but she knew, with a mother's certainty, that her daughter was hiding something that was causing her immense pain. She tried to talk to Mark again, to express her growing concerns about Emily, but he became defensive and angry. "Stop being so paranoid, Lisa," he snapped. "Emily's just going through a phase. She's a teenager. It's normal." His dismissive attitude, his refusal to acknowledge her concerns, fueled Lisa's anxiety. She felt increasingly isolated, trapped in a marriage that was rapidly deteriorating, and haunted by a growing fear for her daughter's well-being. The man she had thought would bring stability and happiness into their lives was now a source of fear and uncertainty. The tension in the household continued to escalate. Lisa's relationship with Mark became increasingly strained, their conversations filled with arguments and accusations. Emily's withdrawal deepened, and Sarah, caught in the middle, became increasingly anxious and confused. Mark, seemingly oblivious to the growing dysfunction within his own home, focused his attention on his son Kevin and on a new business venture he was pursuing. He was investing in a property development project with his nephew Jake, a man in his late 20s who lived in a neighboring town, Oak Hill. Jake was a charismatic and seemingly successful businessman with a reputation for being ambitious and driven. He was also known for his charm and his ability to manipulate others to get what he wanted. One evening, Mark announced a plan that would drastically alter their lives. He had decided that Emily, now 12 years old, should go live with Jake in Oak Hill. "It's a great opportunity for her, Lisa," Mark explained, his voice filled with an enthusiasm that felt forced and unnatural. "Jake's offered to let her attend the Oak Hill Academy, a private school with an excellent academic reputation. It's a much better school than the one she's attending here." Lisa was stunned. The idea of sending Emily away, to live with a man she barely knew, filled her with dread. "Mark, I don't know about this," she said, her voice trembling. "Emily's only 12. She's too young to be living away from home." "Nonsense," Mark retorted. "It's a great opportunity for her. Jake's a responsible adult. He'll take good care of her." "But I don't know Jake," Lisa persisted. "And Emily doesn't want to go. She's happy here, with us." "She'll adjust," Mark said dismissively. "It's for her own good. She needs a better education, a better environment. This town is going nowhere." Lisa argued, pleaded, but Mark was adamant. He had made up his mind, and he wouldn't listen to her concerns. He accused her of being overprotective, of holding Emily back, of not wanting what was best for her. He used his charm to convince her that Jake is a nice guy, and he has no reason to harm Emily. The argument ended in a stalemate, with Lisa feeling defeated and powerless. She knew that Mark was not acting in Emily's best interests, that his motives were driven by something else, something she couldn't quite understand. But the family financial situation getting better, and Mark become their support, she had no right to say no. She tried to talk to Emily, to gauge her feelings about the arrangement. But Emily remained withdrawn and evasive, unwilling to express her true emotions. "It's okay, Mom," she said quietly. "I'll go. It's for the best." Lisa, however, saw the fear in her daughter's eyes, the unspoken plea for help. She felt a knot of dread tighten in her stomach. She knew, with a mother's intuition, that something was terribly wrong, but she felt trapped, unable to stop the unfolding events. The decision was made. Emily would go to live with Jake in Oak Hill. Lisa, her heart filled with a growing sense of foreboding, reluctantly packed her daughter's belongings, her hands trembling, her mind racing with unanswered questions and unspoken fears. She was sending her daughter into the unknown, into the care of a man she barely knew, and she couldn't shake the feeling that she was making a terrible mistake. The first few weeks at Jake's house were a blur of new experiences and unsettling adjustments for Emily. Oak Hill was a larger town than Havenwood, with more opportunities, but also a sense of anonymity that made her feel even more isolated. Jake's house was modern and spacious, a stark contrast to the cozy, cluttered home she had shared with her mother and sister. It was filled with expensive furniture, high-tech gadgets, and a sterile, impersonal atmosphere that made her feel uncomfortable. Jake, initially, was charming and attentive, making an effort to make Emily feel welcome. He took her shopping for new clothes, enrolled her in the Oak Hill Academy, and promised to help her with her studies. But his demeanor soon changed. He became increasingly controlling, dictating Emily's every move, monitoring her phone calls and text messages, and restricting her contact with her family. He would make inappropriate comments, touch her in ways that made her feel uncomfortable, and gradually erode her sense of self-worth. He would tell her that she was special, that he understood her better than anyone else, and that she should keep their special relationship a secret. Emily, confused and frightened, tried to resist his advances, but Jake was persistent. He would use his authority, his physical size, and his manipulative charm to coerce her into doing things she didn't want to do. He would threaten to tell her mother lies about her, to send her back to Havenwood, to take away the privileges he had given her. He would play on her vulnerabilities, her fear of abandonment, and her desire to please. The abuse started subtly, with inappropriate touching and suggestive comments. But it gradually escalated, becoming more frequent, more intrusive, and more terrifying. Emily lived in a constant state of fear, her body tensing at the sound of Jake's footsteps, her heart pounding whenever he entered the room. She felt trapped, isolated, and utterly alone. She tried to tell herself that it wasn't her fault, that she wasn't doing anything wrong. But Jake's constant manipulation, his gaslighting, and his threats made her question her own sanity. She started to withdraw from the world, isolating herself from her friends, her family, and even her own thoughts. She became withdrawn at school and she no longer took pride in her appearance. She built a wall around herself, a protective barrier against the pain and the shame. She couldn't tell her mother, couldn't bear to burden her with the truth. She was afraid of what Mark would do, afraid of what Jake would do, afraid of the consequences of speaking out. She also felt a deep sense of shame, a belief that she was somehow responsible for what was happening. Jake had convinced her that she was special, that she was different, and that she deserved his attention. So she suffered in silence, her body and her spirit slowly eroding under the weight of Jake's abuse. She endured the unimaginable, her childhood stolen, her innocence shattered, her hope extinguished. She was a prisoner in her own body, trapped in a nightmare with no escape. Back in Havenwood, Lisa tried to maintain a semblance of normalcy, but her anxiety about Emily gnawed at her constantly. She called Emily every day, but their conversations were brief and strained. Emily was evasive, offering only vague answers to her questions, and always ending the calls abruptly. "Everything's fine, Mom," Emily would say, her voice flat and lifeless. "School's good. Jake's nice. Don't worry about me." But Lisa was worried. She sensed a change in her daughter, a distance that went beyond the physical separation. She heard the forced cheerfulness in Emily's voice, the underlying sadness that she couldn't quite conceal. She noticed other things too. Emily stopped asking about her sister, Sarah. She no longer talked about her friends, her classes, or the things she enjoyed. Her conversations were perfunctory, devoid of the enthusiasm and curiosity that had once characterized her. Lisa also noticed that Emily's appearance had changed. She had lost weight, her clothes hanging loosely on her thin frame. Her eyes, once bright and sparkling, were now dull and shadowed. She looked tired, withdrawn, and defeated. During Emily's infrequent visits home, Lisa tried to get her to open up, to share what was happening in her life. But Emily remained guarded, deflecting her questions and retreating into silence. "Are you sure everything's okay, honey?" Lisa would ask, her voice filled with concern. "You seem so distant." "I'm fine, Mom," Emily would insist, forcing a smile. "Just tired. School's hard." Lisa's intuition told her otherwise. She knew that something was terribly wrong, but she couldn't put her finger on it. She felt a growing sense of helplessness, a frustration that bordered on despair. She tried to talk to Mark about her concerns, but he dismissed them as motherly overprotectiveness. "You're being ridiculous, Lisa," he would say, his voice laced with irritation. "Emily's fine. She's just adjusting to a new school and new environment. Give her time." But Lisa couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. She started to have nightmares, vivid and disturbing dreams in which Emily was in danger, calling out for help. She would wake up in a cold sweat, her heart pounding, her mind racing with fear. She confided in her best friend, Susan, a woman she had known since childhood. Susan listened patiently, offering support and understanding. "Lisa, you need to trust your instincts," Susan said. "If you think something's wrong, then something's probably wrong. Don't let Mark dismiss your concerns. You're Emily's mother. You know her better than anyone." Susan's words reinforced Lisa's determination to get to the bottom of what was happening with Emily. She decided to take matters into her own hands, to investigate, to find out the truth, no matter the cost. She started by making unannounced visits to Oak Hill, hoping to catch Emily off guard, to see her in her everyday environment. But Jake was always there, hovering, controlling the situation, preventing Lisa from having any private time with her daughter. Lisa's suspicions grew stronger with each visit. She saw the fear in Emily's eyes, the way she flinched when Jake touched her, the way she seemed to shrink into herself whenever he was around. She knew, with a certainty that chilled her to the bone, that her daughter was in danger. She had to act quickly, to rescue Emily from whatever was happening, before it was too late. The subtle signs, the dismissed concerns, the mother's intuition, all of it was coalescing into a terrifying picture. The truth, when it finally came, was more horrific than Lisa could have ever imagined. It arrived not through investigation, but through a devastating revelation. It was a Saturday morning, and Lisa was preparing breakfast when she received a phone call from Jake. His voice was strained, agitated, a stark contrast to his usual smooth and controlled demeanor. "Lisa, you need to come to Oak Hill," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "It's Emily. There's been an accident." Lisa's heart leaped into her throat. "What happened?" she demanded, her voice trembling. "Is she all right?" "Just come," Jake repeated. "I'll explain when you get here." Lisa raced to Oak Hill, her mind filled with a terrifying mix of fear and dread. She drove recklessly, her hands gripping the steering wheel, her foot pressing hard on the accelerator. When she arrived at Jake's house, she found a scene of chaos. An ambulance was parked outside, its lights flashing, its sirens silent. Paramedics were rushing in and out of the house, their faces grim. Lisa pushed past them, ignoring their protests, her eyes frantically searching for Emily. She found her in the living room, lying on the floor, pale and unconscious. A paramedic was kneeling beside her, checking her vital signs. Lisa rushed to her daughter's side, her heart breaking at the sight of her fragile, lifeless form. "Emily, what happened?" she cried, her voice filled with panic. The paramedic looked up at her, his expression somber. "She's lost a lot of blood," he said. "We're trying to stabilize her. We need to get her to the hospital immediately." As the paramedics lifted Emily onto a stretcher, Lisa noticed something that made her blood run cold. Emily's clothes were stained with blood, and her legs were spread apart. A horrifying realization dawned on her, a truth so monstrous that she could barely comprehend it. Emily hadn't had an accident. She had been assaulted, and she was pregnant. At the hospital, Lisa's worst fears were confirmed. The doctors told her that Emily had suffered a miscarriage, the result of a traumatic injury. They also confirmed that she had been sexually abused, repeatedly and over a prolonged period. Lisa was numb with shock, her mind reeling from the enormity of the revelation. Her daughter, her precious 12-year-old daughter, had been subjected to unspeakable horrors. And the perpetrator was the man she had entrusted with her care, the man her husband had insisted was a responsible adult. As Emily regained consciousness, she was initially hesitant to speak, her eyes filled with fear and shame. But with Lisa's gentle encouragement, her unwavering love, and the support of a compassionate therapist, she slowly began to reveal the truth. She told her mother about the months of abuse she had endured at Jake's hands, the threats, the manipulation, the constant fear that had consumed her. She described the physical and emotional pain she had suffered, the shame and the guilt that had kept her silent. Lisa listened, her heart breaking with each word, her anger growing with each revelation. She held her daughter close, offering comfort and reassurance, promising her that she would get justice, that she would make Jake pay for what he had done. The unthinkable had happened. The truth was out, and Lisa's world was shattered. But amidst the devastation, a fierce determination ignited within her. She would not rest until her daughter was safe, and until justice was served. Armed with the devastating truth, Lisa returned to Havenwood, her mind set on confronting Mark. She was no longer the grieving widow, the hesitant remarried woman. She was a mother fueled by righteous fury and a desperate need to protect her child. She found Mark at home, lounging on the sofa, watching television. He looked up, surprised to see her, his expression shifting from annoyance to a flicker of apprehension. "Lisa, what are you doing here?" he asked. "I thought you were staying in Oak Hill with Emily." "I know, Mark," Lisa said, her voice cold and steady. "I know everything." Mark's face paled. He tried to feign innocence, to stammer out a denial, but Lisa cut him off. "Don't lie to me," she said, her voice trembling with anger. "I know what Jake did to Emily. I know about the abuse. I know about the pregnancy. I know everything." Mark's facade crumbled. He slumped back on the sofa, his eyes filled with a mixture of fear and guilt. "Lisa, I didn't know," he stammered. "I swear, I had no idea." "Don't you dare lie to me," Lisa screamed, her voice echoing through the house. "You sent her there. You entrusted her to that monster. You ignored my concerns. You dismissed my fears." Mark tried to defend himself, to shift the blame, to minimize his own culpability. He claimed that Jake had fooled him, that he had no idea of his nephew's true nature. "He seemed so responsible, so caring," Mark said, his voice pleading. "I thought he was doing Emily a favor, giving her a better education." "You thought," Lisa retorted, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "You didn't think. You didn't care. You were so focused on your own ambitions, on your precious business deal with Jake, that you ignored your own daughter's well-being." The argument escalated, their voices rising in anger and accusation. Lisa confronted Mark with every detail of Emily's story, every instance of his neglect, every sign he had ignored. Mark, cornered and desperate, finally admitted that he had suspected something was wrong, but he had chosen to look the other way. He had been afraid of what Jake might do, afraid of the scandal, afraid of the damage to his reputation and his business. "I was scared, Lisa," he confessed, his voice breaking. "I didn't know what to do. I hoped it would just go away." Lisa stared at him, her eyes filled with disgust and contempt. She had once loved this man, had trusted him, had believed in him. Now, she saw him for what he truly was: a coward, a liar, and an accomplice to a horrific crime. "You're pathetic," she said, her voice cold and devoid of emotion. "You're not a man. You're not a father. You're nothing." She turned and walked out of the house, leaving Mark behind, his defenses shattered, his life in ruins. She had no tears left to shed for him, no sympathy for his excuses. He had betrayed her daughter, and she would never forgive him. As she drove away, Lisa felt a sense of grim satisfaction. She had confronted Mark, exposed his lies, and severed her ties with him. But she knew that this was just the beginning. The real battle was yet to come. She had to seek justice for Emily, to hold Jake accountable for his crimes, and to protect her daughter from further harm. The betrayal cut deep, not just from Jake, but from the man she had thought would protect her family. Lisa's first priority was to ensure Emily's safety and well-being. She brought Emily back to Havenwood, to the familiar comfort of their home, surrounded by the love of her sister, Sarah, and the support of their close friends. Emily, though traumatized and withdrawn, found solace in her mother's unwavering presence. She knew that she was safe, that her mother would protect her, and that she was finally believed. Lisa contacted the authorities in Oak Hill, reporting Jake's crimes and providing them with Emily's medical records and her own detailed account of the events. She expected a swift and decisive response, but she was met with skepticism and resistance. The local police, influenced by Jake's family's wealth and social standing, were reluctant to investigate. They questioned Emily's credibility, suggesting that she was a troubled teenager who had fabricated the story to get attention. They also pointed to the lack of physical evidence, the time that had elapsed since the abuse had begun, and Emily's initial silence as reasons to doubt her claims. Lisa was outraged by their dismissive attitude, their blatant disregard for her daughter's suffering. She refused to be intimidated, to be silenced, to be deterred from seeking justice. She sought legal advice, but found that many lawyers were unwilling to take on the case. They cited the same challenges as the police, the difficulty of proving the abuse, and the powerful influence of Jake's family. Lisa felt increasingly isolated and frustrated. She was facing a wall of resistance, a system that seemed designed to protect the perpetrator rather than the victim. She was also dealing with the emotional fallout of Mark's betrayal, the dissolution of her marriage, and the financial strain of supporting her family on her own. Mark, fearing the consequences of his actions, had cut off all financial support, leaving Lisa to struggle with mounting bills and legal expenses. He also threatened to fight for custody of Sarah, using his wealth and influence to try to intimidate Lisa into silence. Lisa's family, initially supportive, began to pressure her to drop the case. They were afraid of the scandal, the social stigma, and the potential repercussions for their own reputations. "Just let it go, Lisa," her mother pleaded. "It's not worth it. You'll ruin your life, and Emily's, by pursuing this." But Lisa refused to give up. She would not be silenced, she would not be intimidated, and she would not abandon her daughter. She had a fierce determination, a mother's unwavering love, and an unshakable belief in Emily's truth. She would fight for justice, no matter the cost. She would expose Jake's crimes, protect her daughter, and hold those who had enabled him accountable. The obstacles were immense, but her resolve was even greater. Despite the setbacks and the mounting pressure, Lisa refused to give up hope. She knew that she needed legal representation, someone who believed in Emily's story and was willing to fight for her. After numerous rejections, she finally found a lawyer who was willing to take on the case. Attorney Sarah Jenkins was a young, ambitious lawyer working with a small, nonprofit organization that provided legal aid to victims of abuse. She was passionate about justice, committed to helping the vulnerable, and undeterred by the challenges of the case. "I believe you, Lisa," Sarah Jenkins said, after listening to her story. "And I believe Emily. We'll fight this together. We'll get justice for your daughter." Sarah Jenkins immediately began to build a case, meticulously gathering evidence, interviewing witnesses, and preparing for a legal battle. She knew that they faced an uphill struggle, but she was determined to overcome the obstacles and expose Jake's crimes. She worked closely with Emily, providing her with support and guidance, helping her to navigate the complex legal system. She explained the process in a way that Emily could understand, empowering her to participate in the fight for her own justice. Sarah Jenkins also sought the help of a child psychologist, Dr. Elizabeth Carter, who specialized in treating victims of abuse. Dr. Carter provided Emily with therapy, helping her to process the trauma she had endured, to rebuild her self-esteem, and to find her voice. Dr. Carter's expert testimony would be crucial in the case, providing a professional assessment of Emily's emotional state and corroborating her claims of abuse. Sarah Jenkins also investigated Jake's background, uncovering a history of questionable behavior and allegations of misconduct. She discovered that he had been accused of sexual harassment by several women in the past, but the cases had been settled quietly, out of court. She tracked down these women, persuading them to come forward, to share their stories, and to testify against Jake. Their testimonies would provide a pattern of behavior, demonstrating Jake's predatory nature and undermining his claims of innocence. Building the case was a slow and arduous process, filled with challenges and setbacks. Jake's family, wealthy and influential, hired a team of high-powered lawyers to defend him. They used every tactic at their disposal to discredit Emily, to intimidate witnesses, and to delay the proceedings. They spread rumors about Lisa and Emily, painting them as liars, gold diggers, and troublemakers. They harassed witnesses, threatened legal action, and tried to buy their silence. Lisa and Emily faced constant scrutiny, their lives dissected and scrutinized by the media, their reputations attacked by Jake's family and their allies. They felt isolated, vulnerable, and constantly on edge. But they also found support from unexpected sources. A few brave individuals in the community, moved by Emily's story and outraged by Jake's actions, came forward to offer their help. They provided moral support, financial assistance, and valuable information that helped Sarah Jenkins build her case. A local journalist, intrigued by the story, began to investigate, uncovering evidence of corruption and cover-ups within the Oak Hill Police Department. Her articles exposed the systemic failures that had allowed Jake to escape justice for so long and put pressure on the authorities to take action. Slowly but surely, the tide began to turn. Public opinion shifted in favor of Lisa and Emily, and the pressure on Jake and his family mounted. The legal battle was far from over, but they had gained momentum, and they were determined to see it through to the end. The legal battle against Jake was a grueling and emotionally draining ordeal. The initial court proceedings were filled with procedural delays, legal maneuvering, and aggressive tactics from Jake's defense team. Jake's lawyers, experienced and well-connected, attempted to paint Emily as a troubled and unreliable witness. They questioned her credibility, scrutinized her past, and tried to portray her as a willing participant in the relationship. They argued that Emily had consented to the sexual activity, that she had fabricated the allegations of abuse out of spite or a desire for attention. They presented witnesses who testified to Emily's flirtatious behavior and her reputation for being promiscuous. Lisa and Emily were subjected to intense cross-examination, their personal lives dissected and scrutinized in open court. They were forced to relive the trauma, to answer painful and intrusive questions, and to endure the constant attacks on their character. Sarah Jenkins, however, fought back fiercely. She presented a compelling case, meticulously documenting the evidence of abuse, the psychological impact on Emily, and Jake's pattern of predatory behavior. She called Dr. Carter, the child psychologist, to the stand, who testified to Emily's trauma, her credibility as a witness, and the devastating effects of the abuse on her mental and emotional well-being. She also presented the testimonies of the women who had come forward, accusing Jake of sexual harassment and misconduct. Their stories, remarkably similar to Emily's, established a clear pattern of behavior, undermining Jake's claims of innocence. The courtroom became a battleground, a clash between truth and lies, justice and power. The media coverage was intense, the public scrutiny relentless. Lisa and Emily felt exposed, vulnerable, and constantly on edge. But they also found strength in each other and their shared determination to seek justice. They supported each other, comforted each other, and drew strength from the small but growing number of people who believed in them. Mark, facing the disintegration of his business and social standing, attempted to reach out to Lisa, offering a settlement in exchange for dropping the charges. He claimed he wanted to do the right thing for Emily, but Lisa saw through his manipulative tactics. "It's too late, Mark," she said, her voice filled with contempt. "You had your chance to do the right thing. Now, it's up to the courts to decide." The legal battle dragged on for months, taking a heavy toll on Lisa and Emily. They faced constant threats, intimidation, and public shaming. But they refused to be silenced, to be intimidated, to give up their fight for justice. They knew that they were not just fighting for themselves, they were fighting for all victims of abuse, for all those who had been silenced and marginalized. They were fighting for a future where children could be safe, where abusers would be held accountable, and where justice would prevail. The courtroom became their battleground, the legal system their weapon, and their unwavering love for each other their shield. They were determined to win, not just for Emily, but for all those who had suffered in silence. The legal battle had begun, and they were prepared to fight until the very end. As the legal battle intensified, Lisa and Emily found themselves navigating a complex landscape of support and isolation. The community of Havenwood, once seemingly united, became fractured, divided by conflicting loyalties and opinions. Some people, horrified by the allegations against Jake and moved by Emily's story, rallied around Lisa and her daughter. They offered words of encouragement, practical help, and financial assistance. They organized fundraisers, started a support group for victims of abuse, and publicly condemned Jake's actions. Among the most steadfast supporters was Susan, Lisa's best friend, who stood by her side through thick and thin. She provided emotional support, help with childcare, and offered a safe haven for Lisa and Emily when the pressure became too much to bear. Another unexpected source of support came from a group of women at Lisa's church. Initially, the church community had been hesitant to get involved, fearing the scandal and the social repercussions. But a small group of women, led by a compassionate and outspoken pastor's wife, decided to take a stand. They organized prayer meetings, offered counseling services, and publicly denounced the abuse, emphasizing the importance of believing and supporting victims. Their support provided Lisa with a much-needed spiritual anchor, a reminder that she was not alone in her fight. However, Lisa and Emily also faced significant isolation. Many people in Havenwood, influenced by Jake's family's wealth and power, sided with him. They spread rumors, questioned Emily's credibility, and ostracized Lisa and her daughters. Some of Lisa's own family members, pressured by Mark and fearful of the scandal, distanced themselves from her. They urged her to drop the case, to think of the family's reputation, and to move on. Emily faced bullying and harassment at school. Classmates whispered behind her back, wrote cruel messages on her locker, and excluded her from social activities. She felt like an outcast, a pariah, her life forever tainted by the abuse she had endured. The isolation was painful, but it also strengthened Lisa's resolve. She realized that she could only rely on a small circle of trusted friends and allies. She focused her energy on protecting Emily, supporting her through the legal process, and building a new life for them, free from the judgment and negativity of those who refused to believe them. She also found strength in the support group that had formed, connecting with other survivors of abuse and their families. She shared her story, listened to their experiences, and found solace in the shared understanding and empathy. She learned that she was not alone, that her fight was part of a larger struggle for justice and healing. She drew strength from the courage and resilience of other survivors, and she became an advocate for change, speaking out against abuse and working to create a safer community for all children. The support she received, while limited, was invaluable. It gave her the strength to keep fighting, to persevere in the face of adversity, and to believe that justice would eventually prevail. The isolation was a heavy burden, but it also clarified who her true allies were, and it strengthened her determination to protect her daughter and expose the truth. The day Emily was scheduled to testify was the most agonizing day of Lisa's life. She knew how difficult it would be for her daughter to relive the trauma, to face her abuser in court, and to answer the probing questions of the defense attorney. Emily, now 13, had grown taller and stronger, but the vulnerability in her eyes remained. She had been preparing for this day for months, working with Dr. Carter, the child psychologist, to develop coping mechanisms and to find the courage to speak her truth. Lisa held Emily's hand tightly as they walked into the courtroom, a silent promise of unwavering support. The room was packed with spectators, reporters, and legal personnel. The atmosphere was tense, charged with anticipation. Emily, dressed in a simple blue dress, her hair neatly braided, took the witness stand. Her hands trembled, her voice was barely above a whisper, but her eyes were fixed on Sarah Jenkins, her lawyer, who offered her a reassuring smile. Sarah Jenkins began by asking Emily gentle questions, guiding her through her story, allowing her to speak at her own pace. Emily described her life before the abuse, her relationship with her mother and sister, and her initial excitement about attending the Oak Hill Academy. She then described, in halting, painful detail, the abuse she had suffered at Jake's hands. She spoke about the inappropriate touching, the forced sexual acts, the threats, and the manipulation. She described the fear, the shame, and the isolation she had felt. Her testimony was raw, emotional, and heartbreaking. The courtroom was silent. They only sound Emily's quiet sobs and the scratching of pens as reporters took notes. Lisa, sitting in the front row, felt her heart breaking as she listened to her daughter's words. She wanted to rush to her side, to protect her, to take away her pain. But she knew that Emily needed to do this, that she needed to speak her truth, to reclaim her power. The cross-examination by Jake's lawyer, Mr. Harrison, was brutal. He was a seasoned attorney, known for his aggressive tactics and his ability to discredit witnesses. He questioned Emily's memory, her motives, and her credibility. He suggested that she had fabricated the story, that she was a troubled teenager seeking attention, that she had misinterpreted Jake's friendly gestures. He tried to paint her as a liar, a manipulator, a willing participant in the relationship. Emily, however, held her ground. She answered his questions truthfully and calmly, refusing to be intimidated by his bullying tactics. She maintained her composure, even when Mr. Harrison's questions became increasingly personal and invasive. She looked at her mother, drawing strength from her unwavering gaze. She remembered Dr. Carter's words, "Your truth is your power." She would not be silenced. She would not be shamed. She would speak her truth, no matter the cost. The cross-examination lasted for hours, a grueling ordeal that tested Emily's strength and resilience. But she persevered, her voice growing stronger with each answer, her determination unwavering. When she finally stepped down from the witness stand, she was exhausted, drained, but also relieved. She had done it. She had faced her abuser, she had spoken her truth, and she had survived. Lisa rushed to her side, embracing her tightly. "You were amazing, honey," she whispered. "You were so brave. I'm so proud of you." Emily leaned into her mother's embrace, finding comfort and solace in her unwavering love. She had faced her demons, and she had emerged victorious. Her testimony was a turning point in the trial, a powerful testament to her courage and resilience. After Emily's harrowing testimony, the prosecution presented its remaining evidence, the medical reports, the testimonies of the other women who had accused Jake of misconduct, and the expert opinion of Dr. Carter. Sarah Jenkins, in her closing argument, delivered a powerful and impassioned plea for justice. "This case is not about a troubled teenager," she declared, her voice ringing through the courtroom. "It's about a predator, a man who abused his power, his position, and his trust to prey on a vulnerable child. It's about a mother's unwavering love and determination to protect her daughter. It's about justice for Emily, and for all victims of abuse." Mr. Harrison, in his closing argument, continued to attack Emily's credibility, portraying her as a liar and a manipulator. He argued that the prosecution had failed to prove its case beyond a reasonable doubt, that the evidence was circumstantial, and that Jake was a victim of a malicious witch hunt. The jury deliberated for 3 days, their discussions intense and emotional. The weight of their decision, the fate of Emily and Jake, hung in the balance. Finally, they reached a verdict. The courtroom was hushed as the foreperson stood to read the verdict. Lisa held Emily's hand, her heart pounding in her chest. Emily closed her eyes, her body trembling. In the case of the state versus Jacob Miller, the foreperson read, her voice clear and steady, "On the charge of sexual assault of a minor, we find the defendant guilty." A collective gasp swept through the courtroom. Lisa and Emily embraced, tears streaming down their faces. Justice, finally, had been served. Jake, his face ashen, sat motionless, his carefully constructed facade of innocence shattered. His family, sitting in the gallery, looked stunned and disbelieving. The judge scheduled a sentencing hearing for the following month. Jake was remanded into custody, his bail revoked. As Lisa and Emily left the courtroom, they were met by a throng of reporters, cameras flashing, microphones thrust in their faces. Lisa, shielding Emily from the media glare, made a brief statement. "We are grateful for the jury's verdict," she said, her voice choked with emotion. "This has been a long and difficult journey, but we never gave up hope. We hope that this verdict will send a message that child abuse will not be tolerated, and that victims will be believed." The verdict was a major victory, not just for Lisa and Emily, but for all victims of abuse. It was a testament to the power of courage, resilience, and the unwavering pursuit of justice. It was a reminder that even the most powerful predators could be brought down, that even the most vulnerable victims could find their voice, and that even in the darkest of times, hope could prevail. The road to healing would be long and arduous, but Emily had taken the first, most important step. She had spoken her truth, she had faced her abuser, and she had won. She was a survivor, a warrior, and a beacon of hope for all those who had suffered in silence. The verdict was not just an end, but a new beginning, a chance for Emily to reclaim her life and build a future free from fear and shame. The aftermath of the trial was a time of intense emotions for Lisa and Emily. Relief, joy, and a sense of vindication were mingled with exhaustion, trauma, and the lingering pain of the past. Emily continued to work with Dr. Carter, her therapist, processing the trauma of the abuse and learning coping mechanisms to manage her anxiety and PTSD. The therapy was challenging, often painful, but it was also essential for her healing. Lisa, too, sought therapy, dealing with the guilt, the anger, and the betrayal she had experienced. She had to come to terms with her own role in the events, with the mistakes she had made, and with the devastating consequences of her misplaced trust. The mother and daughter supported each other, their bond strengthened by the shared ordeal. They found solace in their love, their resilience, and their unwavering commitment to rebuilding their lives. Sarah, Emily's younger sister, also played a crucial role in their healing. She had been too young to fully understand what had happened, but she had sensed the tension, the fear, and the sadness that had permeated their home. Now, with the truth revealed and Jake brought to justice, Sarah provided a source of joy, laughter, and normalcy. She was a constant reminder of the innocence that had been stolen from Emily, and a symbol of the hope that remained. Lisa focused on creating a safe, stable, and loving home for her daughters. She found a new job, working as a receptionist at a local law firm, a position that allowed her to use her organizational skills and her empathy to help others. She also became an advocate for victims of abuse, volunteering at a local shelter and sharing her story with community groups. She wanted to use her experience to raise awareness, to educate others, and to prevent similar tragedies from happening in the future. Emily, with the support of her mother, her therapist, and her friends, gradually began to reclaim her life. She returned to school, focusing on her studies, and rediscovering her passion for learning. She also found solace in art, expressing her emotions through drawing, painting, and sculpting. Her artwork became a powerful outlet for her trauma, a way to process her feelings and to create something beautiful out of the darkness. The healing process was slow and uneven, filled with setbacks and challenges. There were days when Emily felt overwhelmed by sadness, anger, and fear. There were nights when she woke up screaming from nightmares, haunted by the memories of the abuse. But with each passing day, she grew stronger, more resilient, and more hopeful. She learned to trust again, to love again, and to believe in the possibility of a brighter future. She also reconnected with some of her old friends, those who had stood by her during the trial and offered their unwavering support. She found comfort in their friendship, their laughter, and their shared experiences. The healing was a journey, not a destination. It was a process of learning, growing, and rebuilding. It was a testament to the strength of the human spirit, the power of love, and the enduring hope for a better tomorrow. Lisa and Emily, together, were navigating this journey, hand in hand, their bond unbreakable, their spirits endowed. Years passed, and the scars of the past, though still present, began to fade. Lisa watched with pride as Emily blossomed into a confident, compassionate, and resilient young woman. Emily graduated from high school with honors, her academic achievements a testament to her determination and her unwavering spirit. She decided to pursue a degree in social work, inspired by her own experiences and driven by a desire to help others who had suffered from abuse and trauma. She wanted to be a voice for the voiceless, an advocate for the vulnerable, and a beacon of hope for those who felt lost and alone. Lisa, reflecting on their journey, marveled at the strength and resilience of her daughter. She had witnessed Emily's pain, her fear, her despair, but she had also witnessed her courage, her determination, and her unwavering spirit. She realized that her own role in Emily's healing had been crucial. Her unwavering love, her fierce protection, and her unwavering belief in her daughter had given Emily the strength to survive, to heal, and to thrive. She had made mistakes, yes. She had trusted the wrong person, she had ignored her instincts, and she had failed to protect her daughter from harm. But she had also learned from her mistakes, she had grown as a mother, and she had emerged stronger and more determined than ever. She had fought for justice, she had exposed the truth, and she had helped to bring a predator to justice. She had done everything in her power to protect her child, to heal her wounds, and to give her a future filled. Lisa also recognized the importance of forgiveness, not just of others, but of herself. She had carried a heavy burden of guilt, blaming herself for what had happened to Emily. But she gradually came to understand that she was not responsible for Jake's actions, that she had been a victim of his manipulation and deceit, just as Emily had been. She learned to forgive Mark, not for his sake, but for her own. Holding onto anger and resentment would only continue to poison her spirit. She needed to let go of the past, to focus on the present, and to build a better future for herself and her daughters. She found peace and a renewed sense of family within her two daughters. One evening, as Lisa and Emily were sitting together on the porch, watching the sunset, Emily turned to her mother. "Mom," she said, her voice filled with emotion, "Thank you. Thank you for everything. For believing me, for fighting for me, for never giving up on me." Lisa smiled, her eyes welling with tears. "You don't need to thank me, honey," she said. "I'm your mother. It's what mothers do. We protect our children, no matter what." Emily leaned her head on Lisa's shoulder, her heart filled with gratitude. She knew that she was lucky, that many victims of abuse never received the support and love that she had. She was grateful for her mother's unwavering strength, her fierce determination, and her unconditional love. Lisa, looking at her daughter, felt a surge of pride and love. Emily had overcome unimaginable adversity, she had faced her demons, and she had emerged victorious. She was a survivor, a warrior, and an inspiration. Lisa's journey had been a testament to the power of a mother's love, the unwavering bond between a mother and her child. It was a story of loss, betrayal, and unimaginable pain, but it was also a story of resilience, courage, and the enduring hope for healing and justice. It was a reminder that even in the darkest of times, love could prevail, that even the most broken lives could be mended, and that even the most horrific experiences could be overcome with strength, determination, and the unwavering support of those who cared. Lisa's love had been the constant, the guiding light, and the ultimate weapon in the fight for her daughter's life and future. And it served as a powerful lesson that believing a child and fighting for them can make all the difference.